So some of Jerry Lee Lewis's singles that I have are pretty cool also. Just like flip them around. These are like his early EPs, and I love grabbing these. Just they're all very cool. The EP covers are different than the record covers, and they're also fun playing them. They all play 45 RPM, so they really sound great.
Wow!
And these are all through Sun. So when Buddy Holly first started, he played with the Chirping Crickets, and that was his band, and Jerry Allison and the rest of the guys. And this was the only long player record that they put out. They put out a lot of 45s. I have a bunch of them somewhere here. And they came on this Brunswick label, which is super cool. And it's become a very expensive record. The Buddy Holly and the Chirping Crickets is in the $500, $600 range. And, I mean, what's not to love about Buddy Holly? He had a sweet voice. He wrote really incredible type of songs. And he was influenced by Black artists a lot. He kind of tried to have a little bit of that sound, even though it doesn't seem that way, but he tried to have a lot of that sound in there. In fact, he wrote a song, Bo Diddley, or he covered the song Bo Diddley. Here's his first album, just as Buddy Holly, without the Crickets. Some of the Crickets were in it, some of them weren't. And this is on the original Coral label. I don't know if you can see that. I mean, look how young he is. He's incredible.
Wow.
Yep. And then the only other record besides for those two that came out in his lifetime was this one in 1958. That'll Be the Day. This one is a Canadian pressing. You can get what you get. I buy records because I can play them, and if I find a really great clean copy, that's all I can ask for. And but it's still in the first Deco label from Canada, and it's just a beautiful record. This is sometimes he wore his glasses like on this cover, and sometimes he didn't wear his glasses like on this cover. But he was an incredible talent and just an incredible loss when he died in that plane crash. And here's a very early That'll Be the Day, 78 on Coral Records. This one came with the original paper sleeve, which he's usually got damaged to hell. I mean, this one still has a little damage over there. But
Vogue, isn't that French then?
This was made in England, this copy. But it says Vogue Coral, but this copy was made in England. But pretty cool. Carl Perkins was another guy. The Beatles loved Carl Perkins. George Harrison particularly loved Carl Perkins' guitar style, kind of like a rockabilly guitar style. And his first album is the Dance album, and that I don't have. I'm still looking for it in great shape. These things don't come up that much. But if I could find that, I'd be paying about $1,500 for it in like really perfect condition. Mm-hmm. And these aren't exactly in perfect condition either. This one's better. My Canadian pressing is better than my American pressing. The Canadian pressing has a slightly darker 6i label than the American pressing does. And this is about, $500 or $600 record. And, Carl Perkins didn't really write a lot of his own songs. He took from other people, but he had a style that was really kind of liked a lot by a lot of people. So he was very popular. And, it's funny that his albums go for a lot more than other artists from this time.
Really?
Than their albums.
Huh.
I can't explain why. But that is a fact.
Would you say these are it seems like you hit every artist of all these seminal rock and roll guys. These are the records. These are the guys.
These are the guys. These are the records. There's more guys. I mean, there's always like more guys, that are more obscure.
Right.
And some of the more obscure guys, their records could be more expensive now because there's an active discovery that comes later on when people come later on and they go back and they like look for guys, and then all of a sudden they realize, oh, this guy, he was great, but he only put out this album and like nobody bought it. So all of a sudden that's expensive. But off the top of my head, I can't think of one of them.
That's fine.
There are probably like real early rock and roll gurus who know a lot more about that than I do.
Then you've got Eddie Cochran.
Eddie Cochran. Eddie Cochran, he had a sad story. He basically only put out this one album in his lifetime. He was very young. He died very young. And Singing to My Baby. And this came out in 1957. This is the mono pressing. It was only pressed in mono at that time, of course. And, he died in a car accident. So he basically, it wasn't even his fault. He got into a car after a concert, and they were going to like the next gig. And, the driver was like a taxi driver or something. I think it was England. And the taxi driver just like smashed the car. And he was trying to protect his girlfriend. And he wound up like getting flung out of the car and like having brain damage. And he died the next day. But, it was an incredibly horrible story because he had a lot of promise. He was a great guitar player. He was kind of like a sexy guy, kind of a James Dean type of look.
And weren't his songs covered later by prominent rock guys? These are Summertime Blues things?
I'm not sure.
He's got one of those names, Eddie Cochran. Everybody knows that name for an early rock and roll.
Yeah, I mean, he was definitely
wrote his own songs.
An important guy. No, he didn't really write a lot of his own songs. He wrote some of them. None of these songs on this album like jump out at me.
What were his hits? Do you know?
No, it doesn't.
Cool. That's definitely one of the names.
Yeah, I should know. I should know his hits, but I mean, I play his records. Usually when I play a record, I put a record on and I don't sit here looking at the cover like memorizing what the song names are.
Sure.
Unless I grew up with it when I was growing up. It was different. When I was growing up, I would sit and look at the liner notes, and like I would know every word to like every song in the 70s that I was interested in. Gene Vincent had a longer career than a lot of the other guys. He played kind of like a hollow body guitar, which you can see on the cover here. This is Blue Jean Bop.
He was kind of wild, wasn't he?
Yeah, I mean, he was also kind of came out of like a rockabilly style, and here's these.
Cool.
And and he was actually very close with Eddie Cochran. They were on tours together. They were friends. They were like they toured together.
Wow.
So I actually got a UK copy from, I got this recently from the BBC archives. BBC archives, if you can believe it, is deaccessioning all their vinyl. And so I bought a bunch of stuff, like really whatever good stuff.
Doing what to their vinyl? What are they doing to their vinyl?
They're deaccessioning all their vinyl.
Deaccessioning? What does that mean?
That means they're getting rid of it.
Wow.
Yeah, they're digitizing everything and they're getting rid of their vinyl. So I bought a bunch of really good stuff. And you can see like they have a playlist on here, and this was only played one time.
Wow.
So, it's good enough for me. I got it for a good price, and it's the UK pressing, and that doesn't bother me at all.
So you like all the European and UK pressings?
I do.
Huh.
I do.
Okay.
I like Japanese pressings. I like UK pressings. Usually as a collector, I'll do UK pressings for UK bands, and then I'll do Japanese pressings if I just love something.
Right.
Just want another copy of it that sounds fantastic.
What are the qualities of the Japanese vinyl, pressings?
Well, I just think that in Japan, they actually are a country that just reveres vinyl, and even still to this day. So, usually even when you see any used vinyl, like a lot of these things might be hard to find in America, other than beat up copies. But if you go to Japan and you find Japanese pressings of some vintage records, you find them in really good shape because people took care of their records in Japan. And I think that the Japanese, for whatever reason, the technology in making records, they just made some really exceptional sounding records.
Very quiet records.
I can't explain why, but I like it, and that's good enough for me. So I don't have a lot of Japanese pressings, but I do for things that I really care deeply about. When I need to have like that 10th copy of a record, I'll definitely get a Japanese pressing. But then like later on, Gene Vincent put out like this one in 1959, which is a cool record. Wow. This one is a later record, 60s record. Wow. It was 1958, and but then his career went on, and into the 60s, and he wasn't a guy that like faded out or died. Okay, so here's another record. Ritchie Valens. Ritchie Valens also was on the plane with the Big Bopper and Buddy Holly the day the music died, and it's incredible tragedy. He was a really young guy. He came up and wrote these songs that were basically, he's the only one that was like kind of like a Latin early rock and roll guy. And he did La Bamba. He did his other famous song was Donna. There were big hits. Donna was his girlfriend at the time, his teenage girlfriend. And, you know, they were just beautiful songs. And he wrote his songs, and, you know, he was just trying to make it happen. He really didn't have too much of an opportunity. This album came out, album came out in 1959, and I think he died the same year, you know? So that tells you how short his career was. You know, he wasn't one of the guys who put out singles in the early 50s. But incredibly important now, because basically, you know, he was the beginning of Latin rock. So, you know, take it for what it is. That's the guy. So Dale Hawkins is the next guy we're going to look at. This record is incredibly important and also incredibly rare. It's definitely a mainstay in like Holy Grail type records from this period, and really hard to find. I was lucky to find this. One of my favorite record stores. It's on the Black Chest record label, and basically he did the song Susie Q, and everybody knows it mostly from Creedence Clearwater Revival. And he kind of like mixes kind of like rockabilly sound with kind of like a swamp rock sound of like Louisiana type of music, and became very successful with that kind of sound. And he's just really good. So he's playing an electric solid body guitar. So that was possible when this came out because of Les Paul and Leo Fender and guys like that. So
cool.
You know, an important guy in the genre, and this is an important record in the genre. So Fats Domino is the next guy we're going to talk about. Fats Domino, I don't have his first record. I have a bunch of Fats Domino records. For some reason, I don't have his first one. I should get it. They're not all that expensive to get. This record I bought in 2021 for $35. You know, so I mean, it's just a great record. Every Fats Domino is a great record. It doesn't have to. It's not like his first one's better than his last one. I mean, he was just a hit maker. He never stopped. I mean, he almost sold as many records as Elvis. I mean, people don't realize how important he was.
Really?
Yeah. It's not just like the Blueberry Hill walking to New Orleans. It's not just those. He just like one after another. And he had so many records that were million-selling records.
Wow.
And he was just a lot of fun to see. I wish I could have seen him in concert. I tried once. He was supposed to come up with a Katrina benefit in New York, and then he never did. But this record would be in like the $100 range right now, and his first record would be maybe $200 or $300. So they're all very accessible and just a very sweet, easygoing sound. He wasn't, you know, he kind of wasn't really like the piano players like Little Richard or Jerry Lee Lewis. He wasn't pounding the keyboards. He had a great style. He was more like Elvis in a way. You know, he just wrote these incredible songs and had a sweet voice and really just, you know, made great hits. A very strong songwriter.
He's from New Orleans, right?
Yeah. He lived there his whole life. You're going to need a good editor. Wait, can we cut that part? Bo Diddley was like the coolest guy on the planet. And I mean, he just basically, there was nobody like him. This was his first record in 1958. This is his second record in also 1958, Go Bo Diddley. I have everything he's ever done. I can't get enough of them. These are also chess records. He came up with like the Bo Diddley beat. You know, he just kind of had those kind of African rhythm things.
And is that in every song, or does he have variations?
No, it's not in every song. Not the kind of official. Not that. But you know, he basically had that flowing through his veins. I mean, nobody had to go to school to say, okay, this is like categorized like this. This was just you know, flew out of him. It flowed out of him. And also, he was just a real character. Also, I mean, he would have these. I don't have the other records with me, but he would have these guitars where he's like riding on a motorcycle with this square body guitar, just like these super cool guitars. And he had a lot of confidence. I mean, he was a guy who just came on stage and he would do his thing, and he was freaking Bo Diddley.
And did he invent that stance with his legs spread out?
I don't know.
Which got copied a lot.
I don't know, but
You
it's
know.
on this album cover.
Huh.
I mean, certainly like Chuck Berry had the
58.
duck walk. You know, if this was his dance, I never really paid attention to that.
Huh.
But I mean, his playing was super cool, and you know, he was an original. You know, he wasn't copying anybody, and these records are great. And these records are, what did I say? This first record is around $400 to $500. You know, and second record is less than that, maybe $200 or $300. Well, Larry Williams is another guy that we were talking earlier about, Little Richard and Lloyd Price, how they were in Specialty Records. Larry Williams came into Specialty Records a little later. I see the label there. Larry Williams was a great songwriter, and this came out in 1959. This was his first album. It's also pretty hard to get. You know, I paid $200 for it. I forget what I put down here that's worth. It's really kind of in the $400 range. You know, I have a knack for getting things at a decent price. And I mean, he wrote songs that the Beatles covered. You know, I mean, the Beatles were big fans of his. So Dizzy Miss Lizzy, you know.
Slow Down, Bad Boy. You've got him right here.
Yeah.
Who covered Boney Maroney? I know the song, but
I think a lot of people covered Boney
Yeah,
Maroney.
right.
Yeah, I mean, these things became rock and roll
Tommy James
classics.
kind of thing.
Yeah, these songs became rock and roll classics.
Wow.
But Larry Williams, kind of like when Little Richard was needing to kind of come back and make a little bit of money, Larry Williams was always there for Little Richard.
Oh,
And,
wow.
you know, they had kind of this like lifelong relationship.
Huh.
He would produce some of Little Richard's later albums.
Wow.
And so, you know, I think I'm not even sure if he had any of the later albums. If he did, it wouldn't be anything that I necessarily need. But, you know, the early Beatles, they were influenced by all these guys. Same with the Stones. I mean, the early Beatles and the early Stones, they were pulling from the early rock and roll guys. So in addition to just all these other artists that we covered, which were really like kind of the earliest guys in early rock and roll, there's a lot of important people that kind of came on before rock and roll kind of died and before basically the British invasion bands like the Beatles, the Stones, the Animals, Yardbirds, those kind of bands kind of came and took everybody's attention away from everything else. And most of these guys were either dead or, you know, doing something else at the time anyway, like being in jail. But then you had guys like Link Wray. You know, Link Wray is incredibly important. He basically created the power chord. He didn't create it, but he played, you know, he's known for playing power chords. And so his song Rumble was like a huge hit. And this copy, I'm very lucky. It's a demonstration copy. And I love this album. And then this album is also incredibly hard to find. They're both
That's a ripper.
yeah, they're both real. This one's from 1963. This one's from 1960. He was putting out 45 records in the mid 50s, like starting around 1956, something like that. And he's incredibly important. And his career went on into the 70s, and like even his later albums are amazing. He was just a solid artist, like, and he never changed. He was just like, you know, a badass. A lot of people consider the Isley brothers kind of more in the soul R&B genre, but you know, they did put out Shout, and they put out a bunch of records, and they were right there putting out 45s in the mid 50s. And you know, I think that they had a lot of influence on rock and roll, and I consider them from this period an early rock and roll band. This is a killer album. This is from like 1959. It's on the Living Stereo. By the way, the stereo albums from this period of time are much more rare now because they sold a lot less, because not only was stereo a new thing, most people didn't have stereo systems, but also stereo records back then cost more to buy.
Oh,
so most people didn't buy them. Yeah, so they might, like if a record back then was $2, it might cost $3 for the stereo pressing. So you know, there were few of them around. So the Living Stereo, people know it. It's got the little dog. Another guy I feel doesn't really seem to fit into early rock and roll, but I think was Duane Eddy. Duane Eddy was the twang bar king. He basically like had his whammy bar, and he would do that whole thing. But he was putting out 45s in the mid 50s. This record's from 1958. He was kind of an early guitar god. I mean, there weren't a lot of kind of guitar gods back then. You know, people were making music, even rock and roll music, but a lot of them were playing piano. The guitarists weren't always like, you know, Chuck Berry,
Right.
you know, was one. Carl Perkins, Dale Hawkins, they were like guitar god type people.
Funny title.
Yeah. But so he was one of them. Right now, you can get these records for like literally zilch. I paid $6 for this record. Another one I put into that category is a couple instrumental artists. One is Santo and Johnny, and this was later. This was like the tail end of the early rock and roll thing. And Santo and Johnny, you know, everybody knows they're what is it? Sleepwalk.
Sleepwalk's the big hit.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
And, you know, it's just like another kind of like virtuoso type, you know, steel guitar work. And they were out of New York.
Yeah.
And then the Ventures would be the last one that I would put in the early rock and roll. And they had an incredible career, but this was their first album in 1961. And they were the first real instrumental rock group. You know, they had the two guitars playing off of each other. Really the first time that was happening, as far as I know, in early rock and roll. And they put out more albums than any other artist in history, I believe. They put out well over 1,000 records.
Oh shit!
And there was a reason for that. The reason was that they never wrote a song, so they played everybody else's songs. It was just easy for them to do. They had some were like just theme music, like Batman theme or Hawaii 5-0, or just. But they just had a lot of fun, and they were also a lot of fun to see. I've seen them a lot over the years.
Good musicians, obviously.
Yeah, they're good musicians. And again, you know, very early on, you know, you can name the kind of like virtuoso guitar players with a couple fingers, and these guys were having fun at it, and it was just fun, and it was good. And so I put them in that category, even though basically like early rock and roll was on its way out. By 1960, 61, and, you know, you're starting to get into the way station between early rock and roll and, you know, what would come out of the British invasion and, you know, and what would come after that with American rock and roll. So I'll never remember this unless I'm reading it. But basically like the timeline for the kind of end of early rock and roll is, you know, at the end of 1957, Little Richard turns to gospel music. Also, at the end of 1957, Jerry Lee Lewis married his 13-year-old cousin and basically ruined his career because there was so much backlash from that. And then he went to find God. And in March of 58, Elvis got drafted into the Army. I think that there's probably a good reason for that. The government probably had a lot to do with getting him out of, you know, what I guess they considered was the counterculture of the time. And February 3rd, 1959 was the day the music died. And then that killed off, you know, three of their biggest stars in the Big Bopper, Ritchie Valens and Buddy Holly. And in December of 1959, the same year, Chuck Berry was arrested for transporting a 14-year-old girl over state lines.
It's amazing. Of all these things, you still can't marry your 13-year-old cousin and get away with it.
You still can't do that. Like 60 or 70 years later, you still can't do that. And, you know, that's probably a good thing.